original reference variables. If you pass reference you pass a reference to a method, if you change the value stored inside the reference, when you go back to the caller function environment, the information change, but the address remain unchanged, right? And last lesson, we also explore copy constructor. Sometimes we want to duplicate an object. For example, we want to duplicate an object. Inside the main method, suppose I have a circle class. This circle class consists of xy coordinate for the center and also the radius, the third parameter. If I construct an object inside the main method, Java will give me a reference to that object. I clone another object CR2 equal to new circle CR1. Compiler will give me another location for CR2. CR2 point to another object. If you change the radius of CR2, so this won't affect the radius of CR1. If you change all the information of CR1, the change will not affect the object CR2. However, if you assign an object, for example, suppose I have a counter system. If you assign an object A1 to A2, very dangerous, because whatever changes in A2, A1 also change. Whatever changes in A1, A2 also change. So therefore, never assign an object to another object. Because if one day someone destroy A1, A2 doesn't know, A2 still points to the deleted space. So therefore, never assign an object to another object. It will be better that you use a copy constructor to duplicate an object, and the two objects will stay at a different location. In terms of information, they are the same, right? In terms of information, they are the same. So that was where we stopped during the last lesson. Now before I proceed to the next slide, let's try to explore some examples first. So quite similar to what we did during the last lesson. Now, so this was the class that we developed during the last lesson. So we want to explore more on this, right? We want to explore more on this. Now, suppose I implement a mutator method. I try to add in one more mutator method. I say public void set info. I want to set all the info. So I can say string name and then followed by character gender, right? Character gender, and then after that we have the subject S1 and subject S2 followed by the two mark 1 and the mark 2. So if I initialize the name, I can initialize the name. I say this dot name equal to name. This dot gender is equal to gender, and this dot subject one is equal to S1, and this dot subject 2 is equal to S2, and this dot mark 1 is equal to mark 1, and this dot mark 2 equal to mark 2. I then increase the number by 1, plus the number. I can say ID is equal to the number. Right? I can say ID is equal to the number. Now, I can go back to see my other constructor. In that case, I can call the mutator method the setInfo to set the name, to set the gender, to set the subject 1, to set the subject 2, to set the mark 1, and to set the mark 2. And inside the copy constructor, I can call other constructor to do the initialization. Therefore, I can say these of s.name, s.gender, s.subject1, s.subject2, and s.mark1 and s.mark2. So, that is to say, in other constructor, I call the setInfo method to set the information. In the copy constructor, I try to call other constructor to initialize the current object of the class. Now, very important, starting from now onward, when you design a class, let's say UML diagram say that you are supposed to have only 5 internal variables. These 5 internal variables must be initialized through the constructor. Try to avoid using the mutator method to initialize the instant variable. Use the constructor to initialize the variable. Mutator method should be used only when you want to update some of the information, not all the information, right? In that case, you make use of the mutator method. Try to explore other constructor as much as possible. Don't use the mutator method too much in the design, because constructor is there. Constructor is to help us to initialize the value. After that, when the UML diagram says that you only have a few internal variables, the name of the internal variable cannot change. You cannot add in the additional internal variables inside the class. Because when I want to describe a student, what is a student? A student has a name, a student has an ID, right? And a student has a gender. A student takes 2 subjects and the marks are given to the 2 subjects. You should not also put in how much pocket money the student has, how many brothers and sisters the student has. We don't need to know, right? In case you want to have additional info of a student, you try to bypass by a method. Inside the method, you do whatever you want. We want to design a method, other info of a student. So inside there, you do whatever you want. This student has how many brothers and sisters, this student has how many pocket money from the parent, etc. Don't let other people know, right? Because within the class, no one wants to know this information. So therefore, if the UML diagram says that you are supposed to have 5 internal variables, don't add in additional internal variables. All variables you need, define them inside the method. Local variables defined inside the method, nobody knows, right? So therefore, you don't have to let the other people know. When you design a class, you should put in at least 3 constructors: the default constructor, other constructor, and the copy constructor. Whether you need to use them or not, as a habit, this information must be there. So whether you need or not, since we have a private internal variable defined inside the class, in that case, we should also have the accessor method in case we want to access to any one of the information. So you also need to have the mutator method in case you need to update any one of the information, either a global one or individual one, right? And then it is also good that inside the class, you also have a method to display the information. You should not construct an object inside the main method. Inside the main method, you display everything. This is not a good design. It will be better that you call a method to display the information. Of course, when you do the second course, we still have another way of display the information if we need that, right? So don't display anything inside the main method. Main method do the reading. Main method construct the object. Main method try to bypass by a method defined in the class to do the printing, to do whatever thing you want to do, right? Don't let main method just construct the object. Other thing, let someone else do it. Don't do everything inside the main method. So main method, starting from now onward, in future you will see that main method is very neat in terms of design. Okay, so if you compile and execute, you save. Sorry, Java has a student number 1 dot Java. Sorry, Java has a student number 1. Right, I can enter the name, gender, to subject. Right, after that I can enter another person, to subject. After that, I duplicate an object. After that, I duplicate an object. Now, next example. I save as version number 2. With this example, the scope of the assignment more or less is out. Tonight, I will release the assignment number 2. Assignment number 2 require you to do the text file processing. I want to read the information from a data file and process the information, right? I want to read information from a data file, process the information. But assignment also require you to design more than 2 classes. So I will show you an example of various classes and how to link that together. They will be after the next book. Now, suppose I want to do the text file processing. So I make my life simple. I throw away everything inside the main method. So this is my version number 2. Now, to do the text file processing, you need to do 2 import. Now, why I want to set a problem on the text file processing, because UOW assignment in the campus, the second assignment will need to deal with the text file processing. Though the file processing is not the syllabus of our subject, right? Actually, the file processing will be the syllabus of the second course, the CSIT 121. That is the next term. Next term, when we do the 121, we also will put in not only the text file processing, we also put in the object file processing, because we want to store object inside the file rather than text. If this is the text file, you can use the text editor to open it. If this is the object file, you can't see anything inside, because object by object, you can't see anything inside. You actually store some of the reference inside. Now, to import java.io. the file. Second import java.io exception. So these 2 import must be there. Now, whenever you want to do the file processing, in the main method, you must throw IO exception. You don't have to ask it why you need to do so. Just put it first. We will see more features when you do the second course. For the time being, since you want to do the file processing, under the main method heading, you just simply say throws IO exception. Now, before we can process the data file, assume that I create a data file. I say new, I have a student, right? and then I have the gender, and then I have the two subject. I also have the marks for the two subject, right? So assume that I only have one record. So I try to save as on the desktop. I give a name. Suppose I give a name to this data file called info, right? And it is a text file, .txt. So if this is a text file, you can use the notepad to open it to see the content, right? So now I save on the desktop. Now the next step that I'm going to do is what? I'm inside the main method. I want to tell Java compiler, I have just created a text file. The name of the text file is called info.txt. So over here, instead of using the keyboard to do the data entry, I use the new file. I give the file name. The file name is called info.txt. So the file name is a string, right? The file name is the string info.txt, and the file name can be read during the runtime. If you have a different type of file name or different name given to the file name, you can read the file name during the runtime. But for the time being, we just stick to a standard name, just call it the info.txt. Now to do the reading, exactly the same as using the input, I can say name. Now I don't need the ID, right? I don't need the ID, right? I also don't need the, I just put it there first. I just put it there. So now I say name is equal to what? Input dot next line. Since you read information from a data file, in that case, you don't have to display the information. Say enter a name or enter a subject or enter the gender. It's totally meaningless, right? Because we extracted the information from the data file. Now the next one is the gender. I can say input dot next dot character at 0, the first character. After that, I will say subject 1 is equal to input dot next, but input dot next is a string, and the subject 1 and the subject 2 are of a subject data type, which is an enum data type. So in that case, I will say subject dot value of input dot next. Right? And then subject 2 is equal to subject dot value of input dot next. After that, I try to read in the two mark. I will say mark 1 is equal to input dot next double, and the mark 2 is equal to input dot next double. Now, of course, after you have read all the information, you should not display them. You should construct an object, let the student class display all the information. So now I can construct an object called S is equal to new student. I pass in the name, I pass in the gender, I pass in the subject 1, I pass in the subject 2. If the line is too long, I move it to the next line, mark 1 and the mark 2. So I have an object. I can say s dot display info, right? So now I save. So if I did the version number 2, yes, the version number 2. So if I Java the version number 2, and I Java the version number 2, you can see that Java extracted, the compiler extracted the information from a data file, and at the end we constructed an object, we then display the object, right? So main method just in the main method you just try to link to the data file to extract the information. Just like you sit in front of the workstation, you prompt the user to do the data entry. Now you don't prompt user to do any data entry. User will get the information from the data file and then construct the object and display the object information. Okay? Now, so let's try to finish the chapter. Now the second solution is that main method declare and the object. Although definition of another class and competition is a commonly used approach that can resolve a limitation of the static method, there is an alternative solution that reflects the flexibility of object-oriented design. Let's say main method is inside a class called account system. Account system contains some student record. So student record is another class. And this student account contains the student account. And student account has the student name, student email address, and the student number. So we also have the mutator and the accessor method to access to the student account info. And we also have two private methods, let's say for example to create the student number and also to create the email address. So therefore, all the intern variable defined inside the class must be private. Right? All the intern variable defined inside the class must be private. No other alternative for the time being. Of course, when you do the second course, you will see some other qualifier, but in 111, all the intern variable defined inside the class must be private, right? Must be private. After that, since you only have the private intern variable, in that case, you need to have accessor method and the mutator method in order to access to the private information, in order to update the private information. So inside a set of a method, some of them are public, some of them are private, depending on whether you want to let the user access to what the information or what information you want to hide from the user. Right? If you want to hide information from the user, you declare them as a private, which is very simple. If main method doesn't need to call that method, you can declare it as a private. Right? Only the method defined inside the class want to call those methods. Right? In that case, you could declare them as a private. Other alternatives. Now main method is defined in a class. And what happens if main method is defined in a class called example? In this class, you also have intern variable which are private. You also have intern method which are private. In case you have more than one, right? In that case, how are you going to access them? So define a class that instantiates an object of its own type. So therefore, you can see that an object of its own type. So although main is a static method, the class contains non-static field. For example, the object and the variable, and the method, for example, the add the value method, which is a non-static method. So one of the field is of type example. How can they be accessed from the static main? Of course, you can inside the main method, you can construct an object of the class example. Every class designed by us is a data type. So therefore, we can construct object based on that class. So this is the example. Suppose I have a class called example. Inside the class, I have two fields. One field is a non-static, the field, and the other one is a static, S field, right? So inside the main method, if I want to access to the field, I need to construct an object of the current class. So I can say example next equal to new example. After that, for the static variable field, I can just simply call it by name. S field is equal to true. If I want to access to the field, which is a non-static, I need to bypass by an object max.field, which is equal to 5. Suppose I want to call the add2 method inside the main method. In that case, I also call it using the object name, the max.add2 of max.field. That is to say, I'm calling the intern variable as one of the arguments. So when this method return a value, the value can be stored in some variable. For example, the static variable called sField. After that, I display the sField. Now, you cannot use new this way, although it can be compiled. Let's say, for example, you declare a statistical object, EX1, of the class example. Currently, EX1 is not yet defined. If you attempt to construct an object at the class level, Java compiler will give you some error message, maybe during the runtime or sometime at the compile time level, depending on at which stage you want to access to the information. So ideally, if you declare a static variable example EX1, you try to initialize it inside the main method. For example, I say EX1 equal to new example inside the main method. We can use the same example as we had just now. Suppose I save as 2A. Right? I save it as 2A. I can define a private static scanner input. So I can see that I can declare it inside the class. After that, I initialize it when I am inside the main method. I don't have to put the scanner here, right? I can declare it first. I tell Java compiler say that sooner or later I'm going to have I'm going to use the input object to do something else. So I save it. If you Java 2A, you will get exactly the same result, right? But in that case, declaration is done outside of the class, outside of the method, inside the class. After that, objects are constructed inside the method, inside the method. So let's talk about the relationship between classes. So after that, I will show you two examples. I forgot one more example. Never mind, I will do it later. So now we will talk about the relationship between the classes. Composition. Suppose I have a class called account system. Right? I have a class called account system. In the account system, I have two variables which are of staff account data type and student account data type. So I declare them at the class level, and objects are not created. Objects are created inside the constructor. Right? You can see that account system is the constructor. The moment I pass in the name to the constructor, I can construct two objects. One is the staff account object, another one is the student account object. Objects of the related classes, such as the staff account object and the staff and student account object, are instantiated by account system constructor. So you can see that we do the construction inside the constructor. If an object of account system class is destroyed, staff account and student account will cease to exist too, and component objects have no existence outside of the container, and one of the major properties of composition. And sometimes we may have, just now you can see that we actually have two classes One class is to describe the student account, another class is to describe the staff account. Now, a lot of students say that they don't know how to design a class. If you are given an UML diagram, designing a class becomes very straightforward thing. But what to put inside the method is another issue. At least you are able to write a class even you don't implement them. First, the name of the class is the student account. Immediately the first line you type what? Class student account. Opening curly bracket followed by a closing bracket first. After that, the second column, the second row says that you have 3 internal variables. Put them in. Since they are private, so in that case you can say private. The first one is a string. You have the S name semicolon, and the second one is what? Private string as the email, and the third one is what? Private int S number semicolon. No problem. You have the intern variable. Only 3. No additional intern variable. After that, for each of the method, you just follow the definition, set the name, receive a parameter which is a void type and it's a public. In that case, you can write public void set name bracket string. You put in a parameter x. Right? The parameter can be of any name, and the name of the intern variable cannot be changed. Right? Must stick to the definition. Right? So that of course how to use them when you have more than one classes. I will show you another example as well. And all reference variables linked to component object must be the field. So let's look at the composition, relationship between the object. I have a container. In this container, I have 3 reference variables. And the first reference variable link to component 1, point to the component 1. And the second reference variable point to component 2, maybe the 2 or 3, doesn't matter. And reference variable 3 point to the component 2. So component objects are created by the container itself using the new operator. And all objects are destroyed when the container is destroyed. If you destroy the entire container, right? So everything was destroyed, right? Everything was destroyed. Now the relationship for the association is more complex to implement. Suppose I have a structure consists of 2 reference variables, 1 and 2. I have object 1 and object 2 are constructed inside this container. But I have the object 3. Object 3 has 2 reference variables, 1 and 2, point to an object outside the container. Outside this object 3 container. Point to a reference only, right? Because object 3 was given an access to object 1 and object 2. And what happened if object 3 is destroyed? Object 1 and object 2 remain in other container, right? Remain in other container. So you can see that component objects are instantiated by another object called the structurer. And object 3 does not create the object 1 and object 2. It is only given a link to them. Yeah, just tell them the address so that they can access to object 1 and object 2. And object 3 does not create object 1 and object 2. It is only given link to them through passing the reference variable, dependency injection. So when object 3 is deleted, object 1 and object 2 are not affected. So cluster design hint. Declare data field as a private. So just now I said that all intern variables defined inside the class must be private, right? No choice, right? Doing anything else violates the encapsulation information hiding. So we adopt the OO design, object-oriented design, just because we want to hide a lot of information from the user. We don't let the user know what we do inside the class. We only tell the user, if you construct an object, here are some of the facilities that you can use, right? We don't let user touch our private information. Always initialize the data field, right? Don't rely on the default value. So therefore, starting from now onward, when you design a class other than the default constructor, you must have other constructor, right? You must have other constructor. And then it is also good to put in the default, the copy constructor, in case you want to clone an object, you want to have another object that has exactly the same name as the current object. Implement all relevant constructor, including the copy constructor. Not all private fields need corresponding public method to access them. Some fields may only be used internally and should never be accessed from outside. And don't use too many basic types in a class. Use composition. Let's say, suppose I ask you to define what is a student. You may want to say that student has a name, student has a student number, student has the street name, and student has the city name, and student has the state name, and student also has the street postcode. So this is very messy in terms of the definition. I rather prefer to have a simplified version. A student has a name, a student has a student number, and a student has an address. An address will be another class. So that to say, we define another class called address and try to use it in the student class. Now you will have one more class to be designed. That is the address class. After that, you put in some of the relevant information inside the class. Java supply to us a lot of the Java API, right? So therefore, sooner or later, you need to find ways to access to some of the API required by your design. So therefore, from now onward, you should be able to find method you need from Java API. Familiarizing yourself with the basic Java API is part of the learning Java programming. When you write the Java program, and you also need to rely on some of the Java classes or some of the Java method in order to achieve your target. Because those methods are there, right? You just need to learn how to apply them in your design. Don't design every single method. If the method is there, feel free to use it, right? Feel free to use it. Okay, so I show you one more example for that. Then we take a break. After the break, we'll see one more example on association and the composition. After that, we move to the next topic. So today we are inside the class lecture theater. I hope that today we have no demo, right? I want to move a little bit faster comparing to the full-time student. Full-time student has not yet entered to the topic number 7, but I intend to enter to the topic number 7 today, right? Because as I say that, the following week will be your term test, and the term test syllabus including up to chapter number 7, right? So I prefer to clear most of the important information first, right? At least you have time to revise some of the concepts. Okay, so therefore today I probably will have more lesson rather than you do the demo to me. You can do the demo to me tomorrow when you are inside the lab. After I've covered enough syllabus for the term test, in that case, you can take your time. Tonight, I will release the assignment 2, as I say that, right? So due date will be up to Sunday midnight. So, but if you manage to do your lab number 3, assignment number 2 is not that difficult.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
What, the assignment 2 deadline is Sunday midnight. Assignment 2 deadline.
Assignment 2, yes, sir.
This
Deadline is
Sunday.
Tonight, due date is Sunday midnight, sir.
This Sunday.
Can extend, sir.
All days, sir.
Can extend?
Are you joking with me?
Huh? Cannot, because next week you have to do your assignment 2, part 2 in class. Then after that, the week after will be your term test. I have to clear all the marking before you do the term test. No excuse, right? So therefore, due date will be on Sunday.
Cannot.
Huh?
I can't even do assignment 1.
I can't help. So that is not an excuse. We only have 3 more. We only have less than 3 weeks to go. Exam is also coming, right? So you also have another 2 more labs and also 1 more assignment, number 3, and also the term test. I can't hold my pace, but I cannot wait until you are free to do something. This is beyond my control.
You said 4 days is enough for this.
Half an hour.
No, so sorry, but no.
Half an hour, type very fast, half an hour. And I said that assignment number 3 is quite similar to the letter number 3. Right, that number 3. So therefore,
4 days, 3 days.
you don't need up to so many days to do the assignment. After my example later, you will see that assignment 3 is not that difficult. Assignment 2 is not that difficult. Assignment 3 is the most difficult one. Right? Assignment 3 is the most difficult one. But I can't give you 1 week for that. I don't know how many days I can give you. Because the moment I released the assignment 3, already the last day of the lesson. Right? So therefore, I can't do that. I may have to cover the syllabus of the assignment 3 first before I do some other things. Right? Before I go back, I will rotate the order. Because assignment number 3 require you to do some data structures, for example, the array and the array list to do the design. So therefore, I may have to cover first. Right? So you are taking a subject, you choose the program, so therefore you should not complain to this program. But the moment you graduate, a lot of people will pick you up to do the job. Very easy to get a job if you have a UOW degree, especially when you specialize in the big data, cyber security, and then security, high demand in the market. Right? Everyone want to catch you. Right? Everyone want to catch you. So provided that you work hard for the subject, right? So you can see that a lot of students get a job very easily in the market. If you so far only UOW offer this type of area of focus. If you do your degree in NUS or NTU, you only have a general degree in computer science. Of course, with a general degree, you still can do a lot of things as well. But some company may want to look for certain area of focus. UOW student will be the right choice, right? So therefore,
sounds like an advertisement.
let me finish my example. Then we take a break.
Prepare your coffees, guys.
This video is sponsored by you.
Oh yeah. These
Why brilliant? Tonight.
UOW offers many courses.
like the pet link like that.
What?
I was
This
wrong.
guy.
Today
What example
we
I
are
want to
doing
show
an
you?
assignment, 30 minutes.
I think he got some.
Yeah, but I use the
promoting
first
his
version.
course.
But lucky this week only got no Friday, no lesson on Friday. Can start doing on Friday night.
The first version
Okay.
I saved as version number 3.
Looks like
Which
not
fast
working
thing
this
is
whole way.
get out of my class.
So we want to explore multiple
Yes.
constructor. Right? Now, of course, actually, our class is already considered as the multiple constructor. We have a default constructor, we have other constructor, and we also have the copy constructor. These are the basic constructor defined inside the class. But over here, I want to add in one more constructor. Why? Because when a student enroll to a program, this student may not take any subject. And this student may take only one subject. Or some students take 2 subjects. So therefore, we have a few possible cases. Student enroll to the program, and this student may want to defer it, right? So this student take no subject, right? So, or student just take one subject because he has no other subject to take, so he can only take one subject, right? So we want to explore these few possibilities. Now, the first one, we look at, now I put that plural. So student, so for this constructor, student take 2 subjects, right? Now, I want to change the order a little bit. I say that subject 1 followed by the mark 1 and the subject 2 followed by the mark 2. Right? So I want to change the order a little bit. Now I copy this. I copy this to the here. I paste for the stat info, right? So according to my variable over here, I will say S1 and S2. So I rearrange a little bit, though it's less important, right? Just to make sure that so if you want, I can have a line, right? First, I initialize the name and the gender. After that, I initialize the subject 1 info. After that, I initialize the subject 2 info, followed by plus the number and ID equal to the number. Now inside here, I need to put in the mark 1 first. The mark 1 first, followed by the mark 2. Right? Order was different now. Right? And then for this one, I also need to put in the mark 1 first. Followed by the mark 2. Just want to make sure everything in order, right? Now, for the main method, I throw away everything inside the main method. So my main method is empty. This is the version number 3. So I save. Okay, so I compile, make sure in order first. Version number 3. I didn't do anything yet, right? So now I define student take 1 subject. So if the student take 1 subject, I have the public student string, the name, character, the gender, and then subject, subject 1, and double the mark 1. Now, if I want to call this constructor to initialize the student who take only 1 subject, I need to supply a total of 6 parameters. Maybe we start with the default constructor first, right? I want to initialize a student take no subject. Student enrolled to the program. Student was given a student number, but student has not yet registered for the subject. So therefore the name is unknown, right? And who want to take this subject, we also don't know, right? So in that case, if I use the this operator, I say unknown. The name is unknown. The name is unknown. What about the gender? I also don't know the gender, right? Subject 1, not registered yet. Of course, the mark equal to 0. Subject 2, not registered yet. The mark is equal to 0. Now, suppose I do that. I save. If I go to the main method, I construct the first student record. I say S0 is equal to new student. If I say S0 dot display info, so I save. So maybe I have a partition. right? Save. Now I job up number 3. And Java number 3. So now you can see that student info, the name unknown, ID was given, right? And the gender, don't know, right? And subject 1 is now, subject 2 is now. Currently, student did not take any subject yet, right? Here comes a student register for only one subject. So in that case, I can say, you can use the list of name, gender, subject 1, mark 1, and mark 2 not available, right? I save. So now I go to my main method to construct the object. So I say student S1 is equal to new student. So maybe done AK. And then this is a male. This student take subject dot CSIT 111 and the mark. I assign a mark. I call this a method to get a mark, right? So after that, I say S1 dot display info. So now I save. So I Java student number 3. I Java student number 3. You can say that student take one subject and the second subject was not yet available. Now, student take 2 subjects. We already have the constructor there. So I can say student S3, S2, sorry, is equal to new student. Right? And female. And this student take 2 subjects, CSIT 111, and the mark, I don't know, I just get the mark, any mark. After that, and this student take another subject, CSIT 13, right? And I get the mark. I close. Now, I display info, right? I save. I Java number 3, I Java number 3. So I have the third student. Now, suppose I want to have one student number 3, S3, is equal to new student S2. Same information as S2, I say, but different ID. I save. Java number 3. Java number 3. So therefore you can see that the last 2 records were the same, right? Except that the student ID are different. I don't know whether I told you or not. Actually, in one of the terms, 2 students had the same name in class. But it's not called something, it's a Chinese, it's the real word. I forgot it's the word. I forgot the name. The 3 words exactly the same. 1 female and 1 male student, right? So the student, the male student, when he submitted the lab and the assignment, and even in the exam, he always put the bracket, I am male, bracket. So just want to make sure that when I enter the marks to the system, I pay attention to that. But no problem to me because the student also need to write down the UOW numbers. So therefore, in the exam, it will be better that you put down your full name. In one of the terms, I have 2 students. He just put in one word, Daniel. I have 2 students called Daniel in this class. I don't know this Daniel belong to which Daniel, right? So, and in one of the terms, 3 students didn't write down their names in the exam paper. How to identify them? So, SIM need to call them one by one. But when I talk to the UOW moderator, he said that give all the 3 students the 0 marks. I would do that. And get SIM people to call the student to the office, ask them to figure out which handwriting that belongs to them. Right? So therefore, try to remember all these minor things. So we take a break. After the break, I will show you a few classes, right? Then we enter to topic number 7 on the from sequential design to reputation design, right?